Hey, IOStax here. Video games tend to bring their own way of talking with them, and Overwatch is no different. Not being able to effectively communicate with your teammates can be a massive detriment to your performance. So today, I want to go over 20 must-know terms that you need to be aware of in order to succeed as a competitive Overwatch player. Alright, let's get started. High ground. An area of the map that is elevated, allowing you as a player to use the ledge as cover, drop down when you wish, and it makes hitting projectiles like Junkrat's bombs easier to hit. Dry push. Trying to fight the enemies without using your ultimate abilities in hopes of getting them to use theirs. Then you simply respawn and retake the fight, but this time they have no ultimate, so you can beat them. Dive comp. A combination of characters on a team that goes all in or nothing, jumping straight onto the enemy team and trying to overrun them. Whiffed. Completely failing an ability or ultimate, either using it at the wrong time, on the wrong target, or simply missing it. Lit. A character is lit when he is heavily damaged and very close to dying. Burst. A very high amount of damage in a very short time, which makes it difficult for the enemies to react to it quick enough. Falloff. Some weapons deal less damage the further away from the target they are. This reduction in damage is called falloff. Clutch. A situation in which someone had to fight under enormous pressure and against all odds and ends up outplaying potentially multiple enemies at once, creating a big upset. Squishy. A character that is incredibly low HP, like Tracer for example, that can die in an instant and is very vulnerable to burst damage. Hit scan. An attack that once fired immediately hits whatever the crosshair is aimed at. Projectile. The opposite of hit scan. This attack throws out a projectile that needs to travel through space first instead of hitting the target immediately. Harass. Dealing damage to an enemy but not to kill them, but to divert their attention and to make the enemy healers have to heal up multiple targets at once. Pug. Also known as a pickup game. A game where the players don't know each other and are scrambled together randomly. SCRIM. This is the opposite of a pug. This is when two coordinated teams face each other to practice and learn from each other. Carry. Winning a game because you severely outperformed the rest of the players up to a point where you outweigh the shortcomings of your teammates. Chevrons, or ticks. The little checkpoint when capturing an objective that allows you to capture an objective faster if you already spent some time on it. Elo hell. A rating in competitive where games are unfun because they are either too easy or otherwise unpleasant to play. Feed. Letting enemies shoot you so they gain ult charge without you getting anything in return, putting the enemy team at an advantage. Impact. Having an effect on the outcome of the game. The higher impact a move in the game has, the more did it change whether it is a victory or a loss. And last but not least, meta, which is the best way to play the game, either a really good strategy or a really good composition of characters. Pick. Killing an enemy who was out of position, giving you an advantage because the enemy team is one man down. Getting picks can be done with abilities like Roadhog hooks or McCree flashbangs. Death Ball. Don't worry, the term is not as evil as it sounds. This is a strategy involving a Reinhardt on top of the payload being buffed to no end, forming a giant death ball on top of the objective that is hard to push away. Stack. A group of players that play together. A 6-stack, for example, is a group of 6 Overwatch players queuing together. Tag. This means quickly jumping on the objective in order to refresh or trigger the overtime timer, giving your team extra time to retake the objective. Tilt. Alright, this is a common one. This means that you perform worse because of mental factors, such as previously losing, dying repeatedly, and losing a lot of skill rating. Strafing. Walking side to side to make it more difficult for enemies to hit you. Most common way of strafing is 80-80 strafe, where you walk from side to side in unpredictable patterns. Peeking. Walking in and out of cover in between shots to hide yourself from the enemy while you are vulnerable and to show yourself when you can fire back. Stagger. This generally means that you delay something, but it is most often referred to respawns. This is also called trickling and describes the process of fighting the enemies before you completely regroup, costing your team valuable time. Stall. Picking characters that can prolong their life for a very long time, giving the rest of their team time to get back to the objective or to delay the enemy capture of an objective. Good stall characters are Mei and Diva. Bait. Trying to trick the enemy into thinking they should use an important ability. However, you outplay them and they end up wasting it, giving you the advantage. Also, what I did to get you to click this video. Cap. Short for capturing the point in Assault, Hybrid or King of the Hill maps. SMURF. This is an account, often a secondary one, used by a player in conjunction with your main account. Mainly to either play against lower rated players or to play with friends and without pressure of losing something on the main account. Flick. This refers to you quickly moving your mouse to the target. This is really good against moving targets like Tracer for example. Tracking. This means that you keep your crosshair on the target, which is great for characters like Soldier or Tracer. Input lag. This is the time it takes for an input, i.e. a shot or a movement, to result in an in-game consequence. The lower the input lag, the more responsive the game feels. In-game, you can press Ctrl, Shift and N and look at the sim value to know how big your input lag is. Input lag is directly tied to your frame rate, so make sure to set graphics settings low, disable VSync and disable a frame rate limiter if you have one in order to minimize input lag. Crosshair placement. The way you place your crosshair where you expect the enemy to be, lowering the time it takes for you to move the crosshair over to them. Backdoor. While the enemy team is distracted, you can hop on the point and backdoor it, meaning that you take the point without them realizing early enough. Backing. This means that you realize that you won't be able to win the fight and you retreat so that you can regroup with your team. Pocketing. Using your abilities to exclusively support a certain hero on your team in order to maximize their performance over others. Overextend. Overextending means being in a position where your teammates can't help you and the enemies can easily hit you. One example would be to run in front of the Reinhardt shield, making you an easy target. Lurking. Waiting around a corner for an enemy to pass, quickly killing them from close range without giving them the time to react. A direct hit or an air shot. This means that you hit a projectile directly, potentially even against a target that is midair. An XK, for instance a 3k, 4k or a 5k. This is an abbreviation for getting a certain amount of kills. A 4k, for example, is getting 4 kills in quick succession. Hipfire. If your gun has a scope, this defines firing it without using it. For example, it's Ana's left click or Widowmaker's left click. Punishing. This is when you see an enemy make a mistake and you capitalize on that. For example, by hooking them or by charging them against a wall as Reinhardt. Far Mercy. Having a mercy pocket of Pharah, constantly flying around with her and boosting her damage and keeping her topped off, making her extremely hard to deal with. Beyblade. This isn't as prevalent as it was before, but back then Ana's ultimate used to give a speed boost when given to a target. Obviously I can't show you this since it's not in the game anymore. The Beyblade is when you combine Ana's nano boost with Reaper's Death Blossom, causing a severe ultimate combination that can melt enemy teams. This is obviously a reference to the animated TV show Beyblade. No shit. Main. This usually refers to the most obvious entry point for an attacking team. Choke. This is a narrow space that is really hard to push through on most maps. However, this term can also be used to describe a failed clutch attempt. Slope. This is the transition between two places of different elevations. The higher elevation offers an advantage over the lower position. Upper. This is a place on a map that is positioned over the main part of it, for instance balconies or rooftop. Lower. This is the exact opposite of upper, obviously. This is a place on a map that is positioned lower than the main part of it, mainly cellars, for example on Dorado. Shot calling. First you need to explain what a shot is. A shot is basically a very quick command to the team that tells them what they have to do. So a shot caller is when you give your team instructions and tactics on how to beat the opponent. Strat. This is short for strategy, which is a plan on how you can beat the enemies in an efficient way. Cheese. This is a strategy that doesn't capitalize on its sheer strength, but on its surprise factor, due to it not being used very often. Boop. This is when you knock an enemy off the map, killing them. This is most often referred to Lucio's secondary fire, but it can also be used with other abilities such as Reinhardt's charge. Flex. This is a player that can fulfill multiple roles in multiple situations, making him very flexible. And last but not least, fill. This is waiting for others to select their heroes so that you can pick what best fits those characters. Alright, these are 20 terms that you should definitely know before you queue up for a competitive game for the first time. You have some more terms? Let me know in the comments down below. Also, make sure to like and subscribe if you want to learn more about Overwatch as a whole. My name is IOStax and I'd like to thank you for learning.